What's going on, traders? Just want to give you guys a quick update on my expectations for next week. It's not looking good. Okay, I will say that much. It's not looking good. And we talked about this in the last video where I do anticipate a drop prior to Christmas. I know everyone is looking forward to a Santa rally. And if you're new to trading, historically, Santa rallies only happen after Christmas. Now, I'm not too optimistic on a Santa rally happening at all because I do believe we ran a lot and majority of the year this probably was our Santa rally. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get one, but if we do, that's fine as well. So I don't necessarily care if I'm wrong either way. But me, I'm just not too optimistic in regards to a Santa rally. Would it be great? Sure. Am I anticipating one? No. So in regards to a drop happening, we're looking at the SPY 4 hour time frame. And as you guys can see, we're looking at a rising wedge. We rejected here, rejection here, and we really could not get above this level. We saw the Qs break higher, but the SPY just could not make anything happen in regards to newer highs. I told you guys we can head as high as about 614. Lowest I'm looking at was like 610, and we made it to about 608.6, but we just could not get above this level. Now we are currently breaking below the rising wedge, and it's not a convincing break. I will say that much. It's not really convincing. Okay, if we remain below 604 come next week, then there is a chance we're heading towards 602, and then after that, you're looking at 600. Your key level here that you really want to look out for, and I talked about this in the last video, is 598. If you break below 598 on the SPY, it gets really, really, really bad. Okay, you're looking at a move as low as the 570s on the SPY if you get below that 598 level. Okay, so I'm not going to go deep into that target. I want you guys to focus on the 598 target. As long as we stay above 598, you're good. If you stay above 600, that's much better. But 598 right here is your key level that you really want the SPY to hold. If you are bullish, if you're bearish, then you want that thing to get destroyed. Okay, so 598. If you break below 598, you're going to see just straight domestic violence across the market. Okay, so I would really, really pay attention to that and really keep that level in mind. Mark it on your charts. If we break below 598, then I will start talking about where I'm getting that 570s target in another video. But for now, I want you guys to really focus on 598. Don't get ahead of yourselves and just stick to that target. Now, if we do just so happen to bounce from this area right here, you really want to see us get above 608.5, 608.6 range. You want to see us get above this so that we can start heading towards 610, 612. Highest I'm looking at is 614 if we're being greedy, okay? If we're being conservative, if we're being humble, then we're looking at a move towards 610. All right, so that is what I'm looking at in regards to the spot. And so we look at the ES. And the ES, you are looking essentially at the same thing. As you guys can see, we are breaking below a trend here. So we held this trend for quite some time. I mean, you guys see it here, bounced here multiple times over and over. We bounced again, and then we finally are breaking down. Now we are at a supply and demand zone, and we're still holding 6,050, but I think we're going to head lower. If we continue to break below 6,050, then you're heading towards that 6,020 level. You give up 6,020, it gets really bad. Okay. Just like I was saying on the SPY, you give up 6,020. Obviously, you're heading towards your psych level at 6,000, but you can start heading towards 5,800. And I mean the 5,000, the high 5,800 range. So that is something to pay attention to as well in regards to the ES. So you look at the triple Qs. Now, the triple Qs is the only one that looks somewhat bullish here. Okay. And I will take this with a grain of salt. Remember, I tell you guys, you want to pay attention to everything. You want to look at the futures, you want to look at the ETFs because one may be lying, one may be telling the truth. And right now, it looks like the triple Qs is lying to us right now. And so we broke above. We talked about this in the last video. We broke above, and we're currently holding above the much smaller rising wedge. And there is still room to reach the top of the much bigger rising wedge at around 534, between 534 and 538. Now, I did give you guys a target of 535 being the minimum. We headed as high as about 533, somewhere about around 533.1. So we got pretty close, but we didn't get there completely. But right now, I mean, let's actually get a better view of this so we can get an idea on what we're looking at. And so as you guys can see on the daily time frames, you have this much smaller rising wedge, and then you have this much bigger rising wedge. And so we closed above the smaller rising wedge. That is somewhat of a good sign if you're being bullish. But if we're doing the math and we're adding everything together, it looks like the market wants to drop. So if we roll back into the smaller rising wedge, I would say below 527, you are heading much lower. And at that point, I do think you're going to start heading towards this gap fill at around 516.5517 on the triple Qs. And so that leads me to talk about the NASDAQ and the NQ, right? Um, the NQ has rolled back into its rising wedge. You guys know how I feel about rolling back into these patterns. So we go to the 4 hour time frame so you can get a better idea on what we're talking about here. So you rolled back into this rising wedge, which is a bad sign, very bad sign here. And so we zoom in. We attempted to break out, right? We broke out. We even broke out here, rolled back in, and then we broke out again, and now we're rolling back into the pattern again. And so you guys know, if you've been with this channel for quite some time, that you know anytime we, at least this is my belief, and it works majority of the time. Anytime you roll back into a pattern, depending on that pattern's direction. So for example, you have a rising wedge pattern, which is a bearish pattern. Anytime you break above that pattern in the opposite direction, you typically end up rolling over back into the pattern, which is leading to a false breakout. And chances are you're going to continue in that direction. So there is a good chance, considering that we rolled back into the rising wedge once again, not once, but twice so far, that we're going to head towards the low 21K. And so I gave you guys a target of 22,000. We hit about 21,900. So we got pretty close. And then we ended up rolling back over on the NQ. So this is something to look out for. Um, Very good chance that we're going to head much lower, considering what we just saw on the NQ, the ES, and the SPY. The triple Qs is the only one that looks somewhat bullish, but considering everything else that's lining up and how everything else looks is leaning more bearish, we have to go with not the numbers game. We have to play the numbers game and assume that the NQES and SPY is leading us in the right direction, and that is bearish. All right, so NQ not looking good. And so that leads me to the VIX. And so I talked about this in the Discord, or at least I mentioned this in the Discord, right? The VIX is breaking out. Okay. We talked about this in the last video in regards to the VIX, where we have this falling wedge pattern. So hopefully this is all starting to make sense. We're seeing these rising wedge patterns on the NQ. We're seeing it on the triple Qs. We saw it on the SPY. I showed you guys it on the ES. And so if we're talking about the VIX being the opposite of the market or being inverse of the market, everything is adding up. So we have rising wedges on the other indices, but then we have a falling wedge on the VIX, right? And so that leads me to believe that the VIX is ready to head towards our target. First target I'm looking at is 16. After that, you guys know I talked about that 18 target. And then after that, you're looking at a gap fill all the way at the 20 strike range. And so we're breaking out of this falling wedge on the VIX. Let's zoom in, get a better look here. As you guys can see, we broke out. We're currently mounting the top of the rising wedge. So we got our break, retest. And so from here, we could head higher on the VIX. Again, I'm looking at 16 as a target. After that, you're looking at 18, and then 20 will be your gap fill. So something to think about here. You have a breakdown on the SPY in regards to its rising wedge. You have the NQ rolling back into its pattern, which is the rising wedge. You have the what else? ES breaking down as well. And then you have the VIX breaking to the upside in regards to its falling wedge. So everything is adding up. Hopefully, everything is making sense. Hopefully, you're able to keep up. And right now, things are not looking good for the market. And so, last, I want to talk about Bitcoin real quick. I will make another video Sunday, so just keep that in mind. I just want to throw this out real quick and get you guys prepared for next week, and maybe you can see something that I'm not. So Bitcoin, as long as Bitcoin stays above 102K, it can head towards 108. Okay. So if we continue to stay above 102, 102,000 on Bitcoin, there's a good chance we're going to head towards 108,000. Highest I'm looking at is 110,000. So this is something to look forward to. Um, and it makes sense. So I believe MSTR got added to NQ, so maybe Bitcoin is reacting to that news or whatever. But you have a head and shoulder, an inverse head and shoulders pattern. You have your shoulder here, head here, another shoulder here. You broke above this falling. It's not a falling wedge or whatever. It's a falling channel. So you broke above this falling channel, and so if we're talking about the projected move is all the way at 110K. So as long again, if we stay above 102K, then there's a very good possibility that we're going to head towards 108. Now, if we're being humble, if we're being less optimistic, then I'm looking at 105K. That's always been one of my targets. 105, then 108, and then 110. Highest this year, I think Bitcoin can go as at least 150, between 115, 120K this year, early next year, 115, 120K, and then after that, I don't got nothing else for Bitcoin. So you want to see Bitcoin hold here, at least break above this trend. So right now it's pretty much hitting this trend wall right here. You see it here, you reject it here, rejection, and then you're currently back at this wall. So you kind of want to see Bitcoin break above here and mount it. So break, mount, and then continue to head higher. So that's something I'm looking at in regards to Bitcoin. Now, if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator in the market, I think it's just trying to get rid of this move as fast as possible before a possible drop. Now, I will say this Monday, I'm not too sure what's going to happen Monday. There's a lot of mixed signals across the market. A lot of stocks are looking bearish, a lot of stocks are looking bullish. You got Nvidia dropping, and then you got Apple just holding its ground. So it's a lot of mixed signals, I will say that much. You got triple Qs attempting to make new highs, you got the SPY dropping. So a lot of mixed signals. So Wednesday, I think, is going to be the big day, and I wouldn't be surprised we see profit taking this week. Okay, maybe Friday we see majority of that profit taking happening before Christmas, because I can't imagine whales or investors holding on to a lot of or having a lot of money on the table when it comes to the holidays, especially a major holiday like Christmas. So something to look forward to. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to Bitcoin. That's all I have for this video. If you agree, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree, let me know as well. Just keep it respectful as always. Maybe I missed something. Discord link is in the description below if you want to join and you want to see how I'm going to trade or how we're going to trade next week. We had an absolute banger of a week. We hit 5 out of 6 earnings plays, and it's been crazy. Okay, so looking forward to ending next week with a bang, a bigger bang, if anything, and we'll see what happens. Other than that, again, link is in the description below. Until the next video, traders, you have a good one.